the phrase right now, for now, always jumps out at me, and it jumped out, obviously, it hit Jim Trotter and Steve Weich in the same way. For instance, what's the difference right now? That's two words. What's the difference? For instance, I could sit here and say, Jim Trotter is my favorite guest on the Rich Eisen Show. Or I could say, Jim Trotter is my favorite guest on the Rich Eisen Show right now. Right, Jim? That's the difference?
Significant difference.
Welcome to the program, sir. What a soundbite you elicited along with Steve yesterday. What I'll give you the floor on what you thought of it, Jim.
Well, first off, let me say this: I had never met or spoken to David Culley before yesterday, and just came away completely impressed with him, his energy, his passion. I even said to him, if I could suit up and play for him right now, I would. That's how impressive he is. Now, having said that, look, Rich, what have we heard this offseason? We heard the Rams situation with Jared Goff when GM Les Snead was asked about it, and was Jared Goff going to be their quarterback for this season? And he said he is at the moment. And so when you say at the moment, you open the door to the possibility that he won't be going forward, and sure enough, Jared Goff was traded. Go back to the Josh Rosen situation a year after he was drafted in the first round by the Arizona Cardinals. GM Steve Keim was asked, is Josh Rosen your quarterback? And he said, he is right now. And shortly after that, Josh Rosen was traded. So when you hear a head coach say of a player who is disgruntled and clearly has privately at least expressed that he does not want to return to the team, that he is our quarterback as of right now, your antennas go up. But what took it one step further for me in that interview was later in it, I tried to press him again to say, look, is he your guy? Is he going to be here? And he said, we are moving forward, and we are moving forward with those that want to be all in. We know Deshaun Watson is not all in, and that's why, I don't mean to put words in David Culley's mouth, but that's what I took from the interview, that Deshaun Watson will not be there, that they will ultimately look to move him. And the other piece of this puzzle is that a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we had Jalen Ramsey on the podcast.
Yes, you did.
And Jalen Ramsey is a close friend of Deshaun's. They both have the same agent, and David Muguleta. And we asked Jalen Ramsey, did he believe Deshaun Watson, or specifically the question that I asked him was, how serious is Deshaun Watson about not returning to the Texans? And he said, extremely serious. And he said he did not envision Deshaun Watson ever putting on a Houston Texans uniform again. Now, he prefaced that by saying that's not from any inside knowledge or anything like that. That was his opinion. But I have a hard time believing that Jalen Ramsey would make that statement without having some sort of conversation with someone involved.
Jim Trotter here on the Rich Eisen Show. We played that soundbite as well. I mean, your Huddle and Flow podcast has been hot to the touch, to say the least, with some of the conversations. And this is one of the most unique quarterback. Can't call it a holdout. It's not there yet. And that appears to be, because I think, was it you or Steve who asked the question as a follow-up to of Jalen Ramsey, that might have been you, Jim, that this is going to be a test. That's what management will do. Management will say, you're our guy, or right now, or whatever, Culley said, or whatever, and then he came on and it was a little bit more strong at his press conference later on in the day, more lockstep with management speak, which is, the test is coming. And that's the thing I don't understand, why the Texans won't do this right now, and you can play things off between the Dolphins and the Jets and the Bears and the Niners and whoever, and create this crazy market and go pull the trigger, which, will replenish all the draft choices that they need. But at some point, they're going to force Deshaun to not appear somewhere, and Deshaun is going to feel like we're going to hear things that he's not a team player, which is insane, or he's somebody looking out for money, even though this isn't money. A test is coming, Jim, and I don't understand why the Texans would do
Rich,
that.
You know this too. It's a well-worn adage in the NFL that deadlines spur action, And right now, there is no deadline for the Texans to do a deal. As we get closer to the draft, that's when I believe things will ultimately heat up, not before. We still got a lot of time until then. So, look, the Texans, I believe, went into this believing and wanting to have Deshaun Watson at their quarterback. My understanding is that the candidates they interviewed for the head coaching position, they made it clear that they wanted to retain Tim Culley as their offensive coordinator because of the possibility that Deshaun might stay out until, let's say, week 1 of the season. And if he returned at that point, they wanted him to be able to hit the ground running in terms of having an offense that he knows, a coordinator that he's comfortable with, and a verbiage that he's comfortable with. And so what did they do? They retained Tim Kelly. But if Deshaun Watson is serious about not playing for the Texans again, and I take guys like Jalen Ramsey at their word who know him, and knowing Deshaun Watson's character as a man, I don't believe that he would do this if he were not serious. And so from that standpoint, I believe the Texans are going to have to ask themselves the question here, is it better to have 100% of something or 100% of nothing? And when they get to that point, I would hope the answer that they would find is it's better to have 100% of something. So, again, I don't expect anything to happen anytime soon, but I think as we get closer to the draft, that's where we're going to see some sort of movement. And look, the other thing here too, Rich, is the Texans are not simply going to give him away. I mean, we're talking about a young franchise quarterback on a multi-year contract now that looks even more favorable, knowing that when these TV deals kick in, how the salary cap is going to increase, who's arguably one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. Guys like that, you don't let out the door for nothing. And so he could set the market for what, compensation should be involved in a trade of this magnitude. So there are different factors here that all have to play out for this to work for Deshaun to be able to get out of Houston. But I do believe that there are teams out there that are willing to pay whatever that compensation is to get a quarterback of his caliber.
Well, Jim Trotter, I mean, I follow Joe Banner on Twitter as well. I think he might have retweeted something you tweeted out or something that was tweeted about your podcast and what soundbite you elicited from David Culley. And he said essentially that letting Watson go or trading him would be one of the worst decisions in the history of professional team sports because of everything that you just said that makes him such an attractive quarterback to have on your roster. All that said, though, I'll push back a little bit here and say that maybe a deadline is next week. Look, Nick Caserio knows Belichick wouldn't make a move like this because of how much money and how much also capital it would take to pull it off. But I point this out to say that the Patriots are off the table now because they have Cam. And anybody else that makes a maneuver, right? Like,
I don't buy that,
think?
Rich.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Like that a deadline right now of free agency before anybody takes their chess piece off the board because they've signed somebody, that would be some deadline maybe in the next week. You want to do it right now is when I would think.
No, look, you signed Cam to a 1-year deal. That's not going to stop you from signing a Deshaun Watson. And first and foremost, too, I don't think the Patriots have the capital
right
to make this deal. So I don't even consider them in this. To me, the teams, the 3 teams you would have to look at most would be the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Panthers. And selfishly speaking, as a San Francisco native, I would hope the 49ers could find a way to jump into that because the idea of Deshaun Watson with Kyle Shanahan makes my head explode.
So I know. Plus, they're also in the NFC, which is where I imagine Houston would want to send him. And that's the point, too, here, too, Jim, is that Deshaun has a no-trade clause. So they have to kind of work together to make this happen. And, but the reason why I brought up New England was not that it would be a viable destination, but the fact that there may be somebody that takes their piece off the board through a move in free agency, so that now would be the time to strike. Now would be the time to do it. And you could play all these teams off of one another before free agency. Right?
Rich, you know this league as well as I do. When you have an opportunity to go after a young franchise quarterback who is already on a multi-year deal, all of the things you just mentioned aren't going to stop you from doing that. You move heaven and earth to get a guy like Deshaun Watson. And I believe that ultimately the Texans will play these teams off of each other. I believe that.
And just to wrap
It
up,
doesn't make me right.
No.
It just means that I believe that.
I'm with you, Jim. I'm so with you. There's no doubt. I think this is inevitable. And that's just one last thing I want to talk to you about is what you and maybe you and Steve together have gleaned about what is Deshaun Watson's side of this plan. He does have a no trade clause. He does have a microphone anytime he wants. He could choose anyone he wants in the world of NFL media or his own social media, because it is content and it is the 21st century, to make a statement, to say, this is what I had a problem with. This is what it's been all about. This is what I have told the Texans I don't want to do. They have not listened. I want out. And then changes the dynamic of absolutely everything. What is his plan? Has he given teams to the Texans, best you know, that these are the teams he wants? Like, what has he done other than what we think he has done, which is demand a trade and speak to David Culley and tell him so?
Let me just say this to you, Rich, without overstepping my bounds here.
Mm-hmm.
Once this thing is all done, you will hear from Deshaun Watson throughout this entire process. Let's just say it's being chronicled, okay? And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. That's a little bit cryptic. I mean, like there's a crew that's shooting this right now? Is that what you're saying behind the scenes? It's being chronicled?
You will hear from Deshaun Watson when this is all over.
When do you think we hear from him in the interim? Will he not say a word?
I don't know that there's any reason for him to speak. He's been very smart about the way he's handled this. Because obviously, Rich, you know this, anything he says is going to be twisted to fit the narrative that the person restating it wants it to fit. So there's no benefit for him. As much as I would love to have him come out publicly right now and say something, there's no benefit for him to say anything right now. And so he's not. He's just going about his work. As Jalen said, he's a servant leader. He's out doing things in the community in Houston, as well as other places. He's there for his current teammates when they need him, and he'll continue to do that. He's a man of character. So there's no reason for him to get involved in a back and forth right now with the Texans publicly. He has spoken to David Culley. I better not go there. Let's just say he has spoken to David Culley, and I think we all know what his position is.
Well, a man of character, if he's going to be forced to, as you even pointed out, I think to Jalen, that he's going to be tested and they're going to try and make him to choose between his money or his I guess, public persona and character being impugned. And the Texans won't come out and do it themselves. I mean, it'll start being out there. He didn't show up to OTAs even though it's virtual. Well, he didn't show up here, and then it'll be the microphones will be put in front of the Texans again. At some point, though, if the Texans are not moving and they do try to put him in a position to choose his money or his public character, he's going to say something, right? I mean, he's not going to be silent the entire time throughout this process.
Look,
if it's forced.
I can't speak for Deshaun. I'm not a part of his team.
Of course.
So I don't know at what point he would want to speak out, if any, before this is resolved. All I will say to you, Rich, as you know, there are people who are going to attempt to tear Deshaun Watson down regardless of what he does, regardless of what he says. And so from that standpoint, for him, the best thing for him is to do what he feels and his team feels is best for him, and to live his life for himself and not for anyone else. So again, as a media member, I would love to hear from him right now. Yes. But as a person, I understand completely what he's doing.
And to hear from him on the Huddle and Flow podcast, no doubt, Jim, right?
That would be tremendous. He has an open invitation to come on our show just like he does yours. So,
and everyone else's, like literally he could pick and choose what he wants to do, whatever he wants to do.
Absolutely. Or Rich.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me stop there. Yes, you are right. You are right.
You keep on going down. You keep on taking that step, Jim. And then you pulled me back in. No,
I know, but Rich, I'm not trying to get myself in the middle of something here.
Of course.
So you get older, you get wiser.
Yes.
You learn when to shut up, and it's time for me to shut up on that. I just say to you, again, Deshaun has an open invitation to our show, just as he has on any other show.
Jim, who's next on Huddle and Flow? Because, again, you guys have been killing it. It's been great. Who next?
Actually, we're going to bring back our first repeat guest. We're going to bring back Soledad O'Brien next week to talk about this project that she's doing regarding race in America. So she was one of our early guests, and she's just so talented, so smart, and has empowered so many people, particularly young women of color, that we want to bring her back and have her talk about her latest project.
Well, she's on mine next week too, Jim. That makes us.
Is that right?
Yes, she is. She is on my new podcast,
awesome.
Just Getting Started. She's got a great story about obviously getting started in her business and then restarted after she parted ways with CNN, and she's running her own business. And you're talking about all the great work that she's doing. So yeah, we got.
Talk to her about her family and of high achievers, and telling the family that, you know what, I think I'm going to take a year off of school from Harvard to basically be an intern or entry level job. Talk to her about that.
It is already done. It's in the can, and she is phenomenal. And I can't wait to hear her on your podcast. And I thank you for the call here today, Jim. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rich. Anytime, my friend.
Right back at you. That's Jim Trotter, my colleague from the NFL Media Group. Check out his podcast with Steve Wyche, Huddle and Flow. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.